Welcome to Bouchaine Bistro, created to showcase the great talents of our estate chef Martin and beautiful wines from Bouchaine Vineyards. My name is Marija. I'm certified sommelier, WCT Advanced Certified Specialist of Wine, but even more important, I have a great passion for wine and food from all over the world. And before Marty tells us more about today's menu, I would like to invite you to stay with us after the show and join the wine tasting and wine conversation with our wine educator, Robert Fisher. Marty, what are we cooking today?
Well, today we call it La Technique, which is taken from a book written by Jacques Pepin many years ago. There are basically only 5 ways to cook food. You can roast it, braise it, saute it, grill it, and steam it. That's pretty much it. So what we did today is we took 2 methods, roasting and sauteing, and 2 radically different cuisines. We have Chinese and Italian, and how using the same technique, getting very, very different outcomes. So for instance, we already did it because it takes hours to roast off. We did 2 roasts. One of the roasts was what's called Char Siu, which is red cooked pork, which is ubiquitous all over China. And the other thing we did was sort of like a semi-porchetta. Porchetta is if you've ever been to Italy, it's ubiquitous in Tuscany. In Italy, they take the whole hog, stuff it with more pork meat, herbs and spices, and then rotisserie roast it over a flame. We can't do that. I don't think the fire department or the health department would let us do a rotisserie for the whole hog sitting in our kitchen here. But what we did was we took a piece of Boston butt or shoulder, and then treated it very similar to how you would treat the porchetta. We took the wine, we browned off the outside, cut it open, put all the spices on the inside, and end up with something kind of similar with the same type of flavors. The thing is with roasting, and this is kind of an interesting topic, you want to work with a meat that has a little bit of fat to it, because that fat is what gives it flavor, it's what mixes with the spices. So then we're also going to go to sauteing. We're going to do something in the wok. We're going to do a lo mein with soba noodles, which is not quite traditional, but I happen to like soba noodles, so we're doing soba noodles.
Yeah, my favorite too.
We're going to do a pork lo mein. It's going to have a little bit of Napa cabbage, some onions, a little bit of carrots and snow peas. And it'll be also a little bit of sweet and savory, very typical of Chinese cooking. Chinese are into yin and yang, which is basically a combination of opposites.
And what we have here, Marty?
So there we have the pork. It's marinating. Marinating is also going to turn into the sauce. It's got a little sugar, soy sauce, broth, a little touch of honey to it. Okay, so now we're going to go over here, and this is our Italian version. This is going to be done on a pasta. So we have a little bit of pork, which is just going to get a little salt and pepper in when it sautés. What makes this really different, we're going to put in some vegetables. Got a little bit of zucchini, a little bit of button mushrooms, a little bit of sun-dried tomatoes. What's going to make this different is the dairy. Dairy in Chinese cooking doesn't exist. We're going to use a little butter and a little bit of Parmesan cheese.
And we do have pasta here as well.
We're using a sort of version of rotini, which is on the recipes. Recipes are on our website. So that's what we're cooking today. So shall we take a look at our roasts?
Yeah, and definitely, I would say when we talk about Chinese and Italian cuisine, we consider them to be very different. But today we will show that actually they have much more similarity than you might think. Starting with the same technique they use. Both use a lot of pork. Also, when you say pasta, you take of Italy. When you say noodles, you take of China, but it's basically the same thing. So pasta is a very important ingredient for both cuisines.
Well, they call it noodles in China.
Originally, noodles, actually the first pasta was made in China. Noodles were made in China in the 3rd century. And there are a lot of different stories how it made its way to Italy. One is that Marco Polo brought it in the 13th century. Some others say that pasta already were in Italy when Marco Polo arrived, but no matter, one is sure the pasta is so important in both cuisines.
Who knows? It's kind of like one of those legendary things.
Our kitchen already smells amazing.
Yeah, so we have here, this is the red cooked pork. This is our porchetta. We're going to let it sit here and rest. We're going to go to work on the stove here while that sits there.
And what did you use for porchetta versus the...
Well, the porchetta, they're both the same cut of meat, Boston butt. Porchetta is roasted whole. It's sliced in the middle, kind of like a book, and each layer has the spice mix on it. This is sliced flat and then marinated in honey, molasses, hoisin sauce, soy sauce, sugar, and a little bit of red coloring. I forgot which one, but the whole yard. So you're gonna have a sweet and savory. This is gonna be more herbal and spice mix. This is gonna be sweet and savory.
And that will be the main difference. We use the same techniques, but the final flavors are very different. Both delicious, but different. You know, Italy has more Mediterranean influence, a lot of rosemary, sage, oregano, a lot of herbs, olive oil, while Asian cuisine, Chinese food has a little more of that sweet, savory contrast.
So let us go over to the wok. We're gonna do a little wok and roll.
Perfect. Very important tool in Chinese cuisine. First wok, I think, dates back to 2,000 years ago.
Well, the thing with the wok that's really interesting is that the wok was a response to the fact they had no firewood. And so the wok allows you, does everything in advance. And it's when doing a saute, it's very important you have everything cut up ahead of time, which we do. So a little bit of oil. I'm gonna go grab our pork here. And we're gonna dump everything in here.
And you can really make anything in a wok. Vegetables is delicious, different kinds of meat.
You can do almost anything.
Yeah.
I love my wok. I use this, I actually own 4 of them. So always about wok's about high heat. So it's gonna sizzle and start cooking in a second. So we're gonna put the wok in. Next thing we're gonna do with the wok, we're gonna add some cabbage. And then we're gonna add a little bit, we're gonna add the cabbage, the harder vegetables. And then we'll finally put in the...
So how long do you keep the meat just on its own in the marinade?
This marinade, I put it in this morning, anywhere from 10 minutes to a half hour. What you're looking to do here is you want to get the pinkness out of the meat. You don't want to overcook anything. That's a real problem. People are, especially with pork, people are really afraid of pork because of things called trichinosis, which was a parasite that that got into pork back in the old days. That almost never happens anymore. They pretty much have cured the whole idea of trichinosis. So there is a tendency people to overcook pork. Pork should be about 150 to 165 degrees inside. If it's got a little hint of pink to it, that's fine. When I worked at Campton Place, it was really funny. Our chef wanted it 145 degrees, the pork to go out to the plate. And we knew at 145 degrees that the customers would send the pork right back into the kitchen because it wasn't done enough. So when the chef wasn't looking, we cooked it up even further because we didn't want to do it twice, especially on a busy Saturday night.
And for this one, it's already marinated. How long did you keep in a marinade?
We marinated this one, as I said, I put it on marinade first thing in the morning, about 8 o'clock. So it's been a couple hours, a few hours. You're not looking to, with Chinese marinades, generally speaking, you're not looking to marinate it a long time.
But that will bring nice flavors and also change the texture. It will be more tender. But also, since we have a lot of sweet components here, that's something to consider later when we're looking for the best wine pairing.
As you can see, the pork is starting to lose its pink color. So on that note, we're going to throw in cabbage.
In what part of China this dish comes from? Since we know that China cuisine is very regional, right? Every region has its own style, spices.
Extremely regional. Chinese cuisine is much regional than most people think. In the United States, most people think of what's generally called Cantonese cooking as being Chinese cooking. Cantonese cooking is one aspect of Chinese cooking. Generally from the south, tends to be a little bit more sweet and savory. It features rice as a main aspect of what it's served on. This is very much a northern Chinese dish because of the or the noodles. Noodles are very big in the north. If you're in the north of China, they're about wheat. You go to the west of China, it's about corn, which really shocked me.
Yeah, sounds kind
because
of
nobody
surprising.
thinks about corn in China. In the south of China, which is Cantonese food, Hong Kong, Shenzhen, those are going to be rice dishes. It's a little bit mixed up. You get to the northeast, tends to be a little sweeter. Sweet and sour pork, sweet and sour chicken oils from northeast to Shanghai style. And that's where they get really into the sweet aspects. Sichuan from out west.
My favorite, never enough spice, right?
Sichuan.
Hot peppers everywhere.
Sichuan was my favorite too. So as you can see, our pork is, our cabbage is starting to wilt, which is what we're looking for it to do. We want it to wilt. It's going to wilt to probably about half its original size, if that much.
You just move a little bit so everybody can see it, what's happening in we can show them what's happening right now in the wok.
There you go. And you want to keep stirring, keep it moving.
Smells great. A lot of that kind of caramelized the sugar, honey, but also like soy sauce and a lot of the umami flavors as well.
So we're going to let that go just a minute longer. Meanwhile, I've got my other pan hot too. One of the biggest common mistakes cooks make is not dealing with a hot pan when sauteing. Pan needs to be hot. Otherwise, you don't get saute, you don't get caramelization, you get steaming as opposed to sauteing.
You want oil sizzling, basically, right?
Basically, you want your oil sizzling. So while that's going, I'm going to start over here.
And since you're taking olive oil, I know you're starting Italian dish, right?
Right. Now here's a big difference. In the Chinese dish, we used canola and corn oil. The Italian dish, we're going to use olive oil. Again, similar technique, just very different.
And Talcott olive oil, it's actually olive oil here from our property in Carneros. We have 3,000 olive trees here. It's really nice. It's very fruity olive oil, very robust, intense.
So we're going to take a little bit of this, a little bit of that.
And you know, when you think about Chinese cuisine and Italian, they both use different ingredients, but with the same kind of flavor profile. They both try to add that umami. So in Chinese cuisine, you will find, seaweed, fermented soy, fermented fish, while in Italian, umami will be achieved by using Parmesan cheese, tomato sauce, prosciutto, anchovies as well. So they both have that umami very, very, I would say, pronounced, right?
I'll tell you what, I didn't hear what you said. The sizzling of the pork was obliterating my ears. The thing is really interesting. I'm going to do a little line cooking now. We have like 4 different dishes at the same time. So I put the pork in here, hot pan. You can hear it sizzling. A little salt and pepper on there. Now I'm going to throw in a little garlic. I have a couple garlic cloves here in my garlic press. Another interesting thing is that the Chinese and the Italians both love garlic. A little bit of garlic in there.
What seasoning did you put on pork for Italian dish?
I just use salt and pepper.
For now, okay. And that will be really quick, right? As soon as the meat changes the color, get a little kind of brown, that will be time to remove.
Yeah, again, the Italians are not as into marinades as much as the Chinese are. Part of that is Chinese had more problems with cooking and preservation than the Italians had. Also less firewood. That's why the wok was developed. So that's going. I'm going to put the next ingredient into the Chinese one. It's going to be our hard vegetables. It's going to be a little bit of carrots, snow peas, and some onion.
Great. You can be creative, right? You can add some of your favorite vegetable and change it.
You could add almost anything. Let me get the proper tool here. What you're looking to do here is you're looking to have all these vegetables soften up just a little bit. and get heated. This is looking good. So now with the Italian dish, we're going to add a little bit of butter and some zucchini and some mushrooms.
What mushrooms do you use?
I use button mushrooms, but porcinis would work really well here.
Perfect.
You got to get to porcinis. Those are a little difficult to get here. A little bit of butter. Again, dairy is not part of Chinese food, so you don't see dairy in China. Beef is not really a big part of their food either.
Yeah, as we said, Italians get their umami using Parmesan. Chinese use the soy sauce and fermented soy.
Yeah. So that butter is melting nice. You're going to give it a little nice browning to that pork. And we're going to throw in a little bit of the mushrooms, the zucchini.
I can see how that mushroom dish will go well with our Pinot Noir. Such a classic pairing.
Sun-dried tomatoes.
Sun-dried tomatoes.
This is something very different. I don't think you see tomatoes too much in Chinese cooking.
While it's basic ingredient in Italian, tomato sauce or dried tomatoes.
Well, tomatoes are actually from the New World. I think they're from Peru originally, if I'm not mistaken.
No, we said the Chinese food is very regional, but Italian food is very regional too. What you're going to eat in Piedmont, it's very different than what you're going to eat in Sicily or southern part of Italy.
Yeah, Sicily, a lot of seafood, a lot of different influences. I think Sicily is the most conquered island in the world, something like that. I mean,
I understand why. It's
it's in the middle. It's
beautiful, great vineyards too.
It's also a very strategic place on the Mediterranean. That and Malta control like the entire Mediterranean, so it's very strategic. But Sicily, you get a lot of seafood, but there's a lot of Greek influences. You have lamb, which is the influence of North Africa. I mean, North Africa is the next on the other side. You get the Italians with the tomatoes and things like that, but it's very different than, let's say, Tuscan cooking, for instance.
Very different, and a lot of fresh ingredients. I mean, that is the basic of Italian food as well.
I always love, there's a restaurant near my house, which we really like, but they call it Tuscan seafood. There is no such thing as Tuscan seafood. There's Lucchese seafood, which is from Lucca, which is on the coast. There's Mamera, and that's seafood, but it's not Tuscan seafood. I just think it's funny. It's like, Americans don't know. Anyway, so let us look at our stir fry is looking really good right now.
I think I will take Piedmont when you speak to Italy, fresh apples and Nebbiolo. Difficult to get better than that.
I'm gonna cheat a little bit here. I'm gonna taste one of these snow peas, see how it's done. It's actually done perfectly.
And you don't want to overcook the vegetables, right?
So, take a little bit of our soba noodles, and we're gonna.
Although I think you connect soba noodles more with Japanese cooking than Chinese, or I'm mistaken.
You find buckwheat noodles in China.
In China as well, but what other kinds do you suggest?
If you can't find Chinese noodles, you can use rice noodles. If you can't find Chinese noodles, angel hair works really well. So we're just going to let all that simmer right down. Meanwhile, our pork here is looking really good. I'll throw a little salt and pepper on there because it'll season the veggies up a little bit. I use kosher salt when I cook. I like it, the flake consistency. You can use pink salt, use rock salt, sea salt. Use what you like. One thing I always like to do, though, is fresh ground pepper. There is no substitute.
Oh, yeah, it's a great choice.
It's looking quite good. See, now the sauce on this one, you're going to have all this butter here. I'm going to put some cheese in a minute. And that cheese is going to combine with the butter in there to create the sauce that we're using. So I'm going to cheat again. I'm going to taste one of these pieces of zucchini, see how it's doing as far as being cooked.
So the Parmesan is the final ingredient, right?
Final ingredient is going to be Parmesan. Well, actually, pasta is the final ingredient, but a little bit longer.
And while Martin's finishing both dishes, I will tell you a little more about Bouchaine Vineyards. So we are located in Napa Valley, but we are the most southern part of the valley and also the coolest, only about 30-40 miles away from San Francisco. So unlike the northern part of the valley, focused on Cabernet Sauvignon and other Bordeaux varieties, here we actually grow cooler climate grapes. We got a lot of the cold influence from San Francisco Bay, a lot of fog rolls here in the morning. So ideal conditions for growing Pinot Noir, Chardonnay, Pinot Blanc, Riesling, Pinot Meunier. We make about 20 different wines. And something that connects them all is that we make terroir-driven wines. Wines that really speak of its place where they come from, called sense of place, right?
To me, a good wine must taste like it comes from somewhere.
Exactly, elevation, soil type. Just in Napa Valley, you can find more than a half of world soils.
Something like 20 out of 40, something like that.
Yeah, it's pretty great. We found clay, loam, even some basalt rocks here, so volcanic soil in Carneros as well. And that's definitely something that reflects our wines.
Unfortunately, what's happened in the last 25, 30 years is that the diversity of grapes that used to be grown here in Napa is kind of like condensed. You see, we had a phylloxera invasion about 25 years ago, and they had to pull all the vineyards. And they replanted them with Cabernet Sauvignon because it was strictly a deal with its monetary reasons.
Growing conditions are great for Cabernet in the northern part of Napa because Cabernet likes a lot of sunshine and has a long growing season. So very warm days, very cold nights. So grapes can ripe nicely, but cold nights will help to develop acidity, keep wine in balance, and provide legibility as well. We hope to welcome you all here once we reopen. And we have about 100 acres here in the property, 88 planted with the grapevine.
So if you come here and look at, I just added the Parmesan, and you can see all of a sudden that liquid has now become much thicker. The Parmesan has created a sauce. I'm going to throw a little basil in.
Fresh basil?
Of course.
Of course. Especially tomato basil. So it's a classic combination, right?
You got that right. And we're going to put a little pasta in here.
And pasta was pre-cooked al dente, right?
Yes, pre-cooked al dente. The thing is, when you do this at home, you can have your pasta going at the same time. It'll take you approximately the same amount of time to cook the pasta as it does to make your dish. Okay, so let's get a dish out over here. We're going to plate up our
Okay.
move the wine glasses. Thank you.
Okay, great. Beautiful, very colorful dish and smells great. And how long does it take overall to make it with all the...
Well, your prep is your big thing here on this. You gotta prep it again because everything goes into the wok. You don't have time to sit and dice. Okay, and I'm gonna get a little bit of green onion on it. There you go.
So we have two dishes from different parts of the world, but they do have similarities, right?
Similarities in the cooking technique are uncanny. Both are noodles / pasta.
Exactly.
Both are done quickly.
Both are made with pork.
Both are made with pork
and vegetables.
And they're all very similar. The cooking techniques are very similar. So that's that one. Let's get one of those plates here. Let's a little bit of the Char Siu. Now, this one I'm going to cut with my Chinese cleaver. And the funny thing about this recipe, so I used to work in a retirement community. I was a food service director. And we had, I don't know, about 40% of our residents were Asian. And they used to do a Chinese lunch once a month. And not a real good job when I got there. So I started researching recipes. And all the Chinese residents used to go to someplace else on the day we did it because they thought it was faux Chinese. Well, they started eating the stuff that we were making. We found like a real hot and sour soup recipe. We found the Char Siu recipe that I got here. And all of a sudden, one of the residents asked me and said, which restaurant did you order the pork in from? This is in Oakland, and a number of excellent Chinese restaurants in Oakland. And I said, no, we made it here. And they were like shocked.
And here we can really see caramelization, right? And that is the big difference between these two pieces of pork, right? We have the sweetness that comes from the honey or melassa, brown sugar, a lot of.
You notice the caramelization on the top of the pork there. It's going to give it a sweet taste to it.
And something that we will consider when we're looking for the wine pairing.
Very much so.
Very important, right?
So.
Now we have porchetta, which is Italian.
Much more savory.
Much more savory, a little more Mediterranean, a lot of fresh herbs. So this is a dry marinade compared to the pork that was made in a wet marinade, right?
This
we have
was
the
actually,
rub more with the rosemary, sage.
It was rosemary, sage, a little parsley. This I'm going to cut with my chef's knife.
Something not to miss when you're in Italy.
Oh God, yeah. And you just see the difference in the color of the product.
And, so when we do the wine and food pairing, something to consider is, right, intensity of both, or the wine and your dish, texture, body, weight of both. So you want them to complement each other, not to overwhelm. Here, with the soba noodles, we have like a lot of sweet and savory flavors. Often it can be spicy as well. While in the other one, it's more herbal, savory, very crisp, right? So we'll look, all wines we pick to their lighter wine. Something to avoid, we have such a complex flavor profile. Our wines, they have a lot of oak aging, high alcohol, a lot of tannins. So all wines we choose were really light. We have our Riesling, and I think, let's brace this Riesling. We have a Pinot Gris, we have G Pinot Noir, and we have Terraces Pinot Noir. So all these wines are light, crisp, especially these two first whites. Which,
Let's try some of these.
Okay.
This is the fun part of the job.
I cannot wait. Yes, that's the best part.
I think we need the tongs there to get the pasta. So I'm going to give Marija a little taste of the lo mein. Some pork in that. A little taste.
And we will try with the wines we chose for today. What is your favorite wine with the Chinese cuisine?
Riesling.
Safe choice, even when it's like Sichuan, super spicy food, Riesling will be the best choice for it. Or Gewürztraminer, or we have Pinot Gris today as well, Pinot Blanc, so light, crisp wines.
Actually, I hate to say this, with Szechuan food, beer.
That's a pretty safe choice too.
Good.
When we taste the wine and food, we always taste the wine first, right? You want to see how wine tastes on its own, then food and wine again. That's the best way to complement and compare how they complement each other. So,
I think it's really interesting. The most important part about matching food and wine is going to be the finish, because the finish is what actually pairs with the food. It's like you don't eat with a full, you don't pour wine into a full mouth, and you don't put food into a full mouth of wine.
It's all about the aftertaste.
It's all about the aftertaste. And what is the finish? Count after you taste the wine, how long it sits there.
A lot of like a lemon, a lot of citrus, a little savory, mineral. And now Riesling is a dry Riesling. Great that it's really misunderstood in this country, I feel, except for the German Riesling and some producers in the United States. There are a lot of delicious dry Rieslings around the world. If you go to France, Alsace, Riesling is always dry. If you go to Austria, dry Rieslings. Australia, Italy, Piedmont, always dry Rieslings. A lot of dry, it does not have to be sweet.
No, but we'll have residual sugar. The thing that makes Riesling is acidity, and that sugar is what's going to be It's going to try the Riesling with the Lomé. Really good match.
Delicious.
Thank you.
It's really perfect.
Perfect match. Now I'm going to try a little Pinot Blanc with
And the salt from the dish also enhances the aroma from the wine. So you really get that fruit pop from the Riesling, right?
So now I did a little bit of the Pinot Blanc.
Pinot Blanc, called here, or Pinot Gris actually, or
Pinot
Pinot
Gris,
Grigio in Italy, or CV Pinot called in Slovenia, or
I hear you get a little sweetness from the onions.
Brown Burgunder in Austria, but definitely really light wine. What kind of green apple? What do you taste?
I get green apple.
Green apple, citrus, almost like a lime. And
Riesling's,
also really bright acidity, which is really important.
Riesling's a better match. Just my own.
And at the end, it's always trust your own palate.
That's very true.
And, combination you like the best, it's the best one for you.
However, I'm going to say that Pinot Gris will probably go really well with the pasta.
Everybody's excited for this show to finish so they can enjoy the food we have today. Yeah, I can see definitely that the Pinot Gris really matches that kind of lot of herbs that we have in a pasta too. And bright acidity goes well with the pork.
Just tried the Riesling with the pasta. The Riesling's a great match with the pasta.
Nice, and that's what we're going to do, to taste all the wines with all the dishes and see what is the perfect match for us. Terrace is next.
Yep. The porchetta is to die for. The porchetta is to die for.
Yeah, porchetta is amazing, and some classic pairing, right? When you're in Italy, it will really go well with the local Sangiovese.
Yep. Well, first time I was in Italy, we actually had a Franciacorta.
Or Franciacorta, which is their sparkling wine made by traditional method, like a champagne in France.
Except they don't use Pinot Meunier, the third grape. They use Pinot Blanc.
They use Pinot Blanco, yes.
It's really good. And there you get the fattiness of the cut of meat, blending with the herbs and the spices, and kind of like self-marinated. Great match with the terraces.
We make about 7 different Pinot Noirs. And something unique for terraces is that actually that wine, it's a Dijon clone, which is by its nature really spicy, earthy, pretty robust Pinot Noir. And that one is grown on a steep slope. So how that changes the flavor profile.
North-facing steep
And we
slope.
also found some basalt rocks there, so volcanic rocks as well. So definitely steep slopes, you have more stress for the wine. So you get smaller yields, smaller berry, but more fruit concentration, more intensity. Also that volcanic soil will bring nice minerality and the brighter acidity to the wine as well. And then we have also our G Pinot Noir. It's personally my favorite. It's a very special vineyard here in Carneros, old wines, about 50 years old wines, dry farm. So again, very small yields, but really beautiful wines, very concentrated. They can age for a long time as well. And even if you look at the colors, they're very different. This one is 2018, the other one is 2016. So this one, the younger one, looks a little more purple and more ruby. The other one is a little more brick because wine by aging lose the color as well. Tannins become softer and develop more earthy notes. Especially Pinot Noir, it already has that kind of mushroom, cedar, leathery flavor profile, forest floor.
Try with the Chinese pork. Which is interesting because Dr. G is a pillar in the local Chinese community. We love his vineyard because Dr. G, whenever we pick his vineyard, he buys dim sum lunch for everybody here at the winery.
Makes everybody happy.
Everybody's very happy on that.
So something that connects all the wines we choose today for all these dishes are that they're all lighter, right? All light tannins, bright acidity, crisp wines, nothing, you know,
No
oak
tannin,
influence,
no oaks.
no tannins, no high alcohol. That's something to look for every time when you think or have some challenging dishes for the wine pairings.
All right. So, we're gonna.
Any questions?
Any questions?
Chef Martin, I have a question.
Okay.
Repeat it so they can hear it. Since you brought up dim sum, what part of China is dim sum?
That's a very good question. Rob, our technical director, asked what part of China is dim sum from? Traditionally, it's from the Cantonese district. However, you'll find dim sum all over. We had dim sum for breakfast every night, every day we were in China.
And there are different versions, right?
Oh, yeah,
That
totally.
is the beautiful part. Wherever you travel, it's a, you know,
It's a little
cuisine.
different, yeah. It was funny because eventually we were going to go to a dim sum restaurant our last day in China, but we ended up at a Chinese barbecue because it was so damn hot. It was like 90 degrees and 100% humidity. Anyway, so you'll find dim sum all over China. Anybody else with a question?
Okay.
Rob, has got another question?
You mixed both butter and olive oil in the Italian dish for cooking. Any benefits or things to be cautious of when mixing butter and any type of oil together?
That's an interesting question.
Just repeat it so they could not hear it. Yeah.
So Rob was asking about mixing of olive oil and butter as we did in the Italian dish. What we did in the butter with the Italian dish is that it mixed with the juices from the mushrooms and the pork, and then mixed with the Parmesan cheese to create a sauce. A little bit different aspect of again, kind of like the stir fry sauce we did with the Chinese dish, only doing it Italian style, where the Chinese dish used soy sauce, that we use Parmesan cheese and butter. Just generally, it's not a common thing to do. When I was cooking, I always did my sauteing and whatever I was going to finish the product in. But you never know. You know, you play with things. There are no hard and set rules, which is kind of like something that one of the things is everybody, when you look to cook, you really shouldn't cook by the recipe per se. You should cook by the technique. Very important. Now, the recipe may give you what order to put everything in, but it's a technique that's impossible. Master the technique, you can make any recipe.
We hope you enjoyed our Bouchaine Bistro today. We hope to see you again. We will actually have a break for the next Sunday, and we'll be back on February 7th. And what will be the theme?
Easy Valentine's Day dishes, because the last thing you want to do is be in the kitchen on Valentine's Day.
Perfect, and some fun wine pairings as well.
We'll figure something out. Well, of course, bubbles.
If you would like to have a customized wine and cooking class, we are very happy to do that for you. Customize the recipes, and you can cook along with us.
We're very much happy to do that. Thank you very much for joining us.
And please stay on, because Rob is going to join us soon. If you have any wine questions, feel free to ask Rob, and we hope to see you again soon, and have a great Sunday. Cheers. Everyone.